Dear Vice Rector Professor Zimmer, dear representative of the European Commission, Dr. Michaelis Chretikos, dear colleagues and partners of the RE4GREEN consortium, dear members of the stakeholder and advisory board, friend Partemann, thank you for coming to our meeting today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great pleasure to welcome you all here at the University of Bonn to start with our work on RE4GREEN. I look very much forward to the various challenges of combining aspects of environmental ethics and research ethics and the raising awareness of the connection of science, research, technology, bioeconomy, and society. It's a challenge in terms of the relationship between science and society, but also an interdisciplinary challenge of how to combine different language games and methods for a productive collaboration. I suspect that this is the first constellation of its kind in an EU-funded project to support the European path of a green transition. We all consider that there is a growing awareness of the importance of having all sectors of society adapt to face a range of global environmental and climate challenges, taking into account intergenerational justice and freedom. However, we may well have different ideas about the relationship between nature and humanity, about responsibilities towards members of living and the future generations, but also about key concepts like nature, freedom, and justice. Above all, the concept of nature is a central concept in this debate. Typical meanings include, on the one hand, descriptions that we are determined by laws of nature as biological organisms. And on the other hand, we consider our human nature to be undetermined, that we are free and autonomous, and that our nature contains a sense of justice. Against this background of a dialectical meaning of the concept of nature, the conceptual challenge of RE4GREEN could be, how can we use the law of nature to develop good agricultural products, sustainable energy, and building materials through research in agriculture, biology, technology, and so on, while using our responsible human nature to regulate them. Already in the Romantic period in Europe, people considered the negative side effects of technology and industrialization. Whether in the form of nostalgic longing or a guilty conscience, we suddenly return already in the 19th century to a notion of nature as symbolized by the German painter Caspar David Friedrich. We are celebrating his 250th birthday this year. His painting, The Sea of Ice, depicts the power of nature. Ice floes are piling up and crushing a shipwreck. And the sight inspires awe, but is not only associated with destruction and mortality, but also with beauty and the sublime. During these 250 years, many things have changed in the way we interact with nature. In reality, our romantic flashbacks look more like what Swantje Günzel has depicted in her work. She calls this picture Seestück 2, Sea Piece 2. The romantic view on nature provides brief relief, but the real practice of the observer is utilitarian, destructive, or at least not very respectful. We love our rest in romantic views on nature. At the same time, we do not care much about all the garbage we simultaneously produce. Our project, RE4GREEN, cannot resolve such obvious contradiction in our behavior, but can help scientific disciplines to become more aware of the interdependence between science and the environment and the society, and to develop training materials that teach early career researchers, but also experienced scientists, in particular, how they can meaningfully take into account the requirements of the European Code of Conduct, one of which is, we as researchers need to respect colleagues, research participants, research subjects, society, ecosystems, cultural heritage, and the environment, on page 5 of the code. These demands and challenges require developing an encompassing framework for research and innovation to address environmental and climate ethics and integrity issues which relate not only to research and innovation involving potentially significant environmental and climate repercussions, but also research and innovation specifically aiming to develop knowledge and technologies to address environmental and climate challenges. RE4GREEN's main goal is therefore to contribute to a European research area, ethics and integrity framework for research and innovation activities designed to support the transition to a sustained economy and society as envisioned by the European Green Deal. While research and innovation itself has too often been part of the problem of environmental degradation and biodiversity loss, a central pillar of the European Green Deal and associated legislation is to promote new technologies and sustainable solutions. Transition and transformation are the obviously buzzwords in this context. Unfortunately, in many areas of our society, we consider transformation primarily in technical or economic categories and language games. Rather, the transformation we are talking about affects significantly our anthropological and normative concepts, perceptions, and beliefs. Without reflecting on them, such a technological transformation process to a sustainable form of bioeconomy and ethically responsible research cannot succeed in social practice. And this is where it is decided whether the people in our societies are taking along in those processes of change or not. Since the transformation does not only bring advantages for a region or a group of people, but they may also require disadvantages and burdens. And whatever we do or not do, it has significant impact on the living and working conditions of future generations. And there are always losers and winners, even in a societal successful process of transformation. And we should never forget those losers, to give them a perspective. This is important for the process of achieving social and global peace. But where can we find orientation in this field? As we live in a plural and diverse world with a lot of tensions between global north and global south, between east and west, also with conflicts among religions, we find different ideas on how to integrate nature and our natural origins into our choices of action. Right here, nature is an interesting key concept for our normative considerations in ethics, law, and politics. We live in a common nature, our planet, and we share a nature, our human nature, that produces the same or at least similar basic needs and capabilities, such as health, food, life-worthy environment, friendships, families, social, spiritual engagements, and many other aspects as outlined by humanitarian philosophers. All these aspects are common to us as human beings having a common human nature. Even if we apply and live them out differently in different cultural contexts, we share it. However, often the impression is that there are two competing scenarios for an anthropological setting where nature plays completely different roles. One sees a future salvation in overcoming nature, in understanding nature at best as a playground that can be shaped as a kind of stepping stone into a better world of pure technology and artificial products, including a new meta-universe as virtual reality. Culture is identified with excessive artificiality. Naturalness of humans is at best annoying. The alternative scenario is a return to nature in the pre-technological or at least pre-industrial time. Nature is taken as something normative. Nature knows best. But these do not have to be the only alternatives. These cannot be the alternatives. I'm quite convinced that both scenarios are based on misconceptions about nature and culture. Nature and culture are much closer to each other, and science and research participate in both nature and culture. Even if we assume that there is a nature outside of ourselves, nature is always how we interpret it from our very culture. The concept of nature is itself part of our culture, or cultures. And the other way around, culture is not simply the artificial or the other, the opposite of nature, but has its origin in nature. It's transformed and developed from there. In this understanding, culture is considered as a kind of second nature. This concept of second nature is to overcome those dualisms and its tradition of the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, and particularly further developed by Cicero, as it has taken up again by Hegel, or later in modern philosophy by John McDowell, Charles Taylor, and others. The American biologist and historian Donna Haraway proposed, against this background, the new concept of nature culture. Therefore, in the light of climate change and biodiversity loss, it seems to me that from an ethical and anthropological perspective, for a sustainable way to live and also to perform research, thus for an appropriate future scenario, a return to the integration of humans into nature and its diversity in accordance with the limits that our planet show us is urgently needed. And against the background of considering culture as our second nature, I call this an ethics of metabolic and aesthetic embeddedness in nature. We need our metabolic sensorium, which is provided by our bodies, not only for the perception of our immediate natural environmental conditions, such as heat and cold, but also for our social aesthetic reception and interaction. This is because the natural environment, our first nature, and the social environment, our second nature, are closely interwoven. Therefore, ecological poverty and social poverty, unfortunately, do often go hand in hand. This includes also a concept of social that respects the flourishing of non-human organisms. What can research and innovation ethics contribute in this context to support transition and transformation? One critical obstacle to to transformative change is the unequal distribution of benefits of scientific and technological innovation, which undermines the EU's commitments to a sustainable transition that leaves no one behind, as President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, clearly announced in one of his speeches in 2020. Negative impacts are often both unequally caused and unequally shared. A second obstacle is ensuring coherence among the values and goals of development, climate mitigation and adaptation, and biodiversity conservation. Scientific and technological innovations have the potential to advance one goal at the expense of another, such as when a technology promises climate benefits, but may have harmful impacts on biodiversity. Against this background, research ethics and integrity frameworks constitute vital cornerstones of the European research area. Historically, research ethics guidelines have primarily been developed in the field of biomedical research aimed at the protection of human participants. But it's quite a new challenge now to integrate the findings of environmental and climate ethics into the research ethics given the different methodologies and value assumptions in bioeconomy, in agriculture, in biology, in environmental technologies, etc. And this is the background against RE4GREEN's combines research ethics and environmental ethics with developments in technologies. In practice, we will proceed in RE4GREEN with 4 steps to achieve our main objectives: analyzing, mapping the conceptual context, and identifying gaps in guidelines and trainings. We are going to build a community for bottom-up engagements, awareness raising, and exchange across stakeholders by organizing social labs. And based on the mapping and the findings of the social labs, we will produce and/or complement operational ethics and integrity guidelines and recommendations. These 3 steps provide a basis to develop and implement traditional online research ethics and integrity training programs on climate and environmental aspects of research and innovation. The combination of RE4GREEN with our already running project IREX does allow us a better integrated environmental ethics topics into the training programs of the pilot universities, where the University of Bonn is one of, to improve the ethics governance structures of a university and other research organizations. I'm convinced that the decisive reason why we submitted a successful application with RE4GREEN was the integration of the social labs as a guiding methodology. This is because it recognizes that the slogan, "Follow the science," is misguided, especially when it comes to major social issues. Rather, science must be better integrated into society and vice versa. And this is what the social labs do. Social concerns must be better integrated in the debates in science, because science is also a social practice. I hope that we can all make a small contribution to this large field with RE4GREEN. So the reproductivity and productivity of RE4GREEN depends very much on the European networks that are integrated in RE4GREEN, like EAMA, like NRE, like EUREC, like NRIO. And I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you very much also for your long journeys from Japan, from Korea, and from South Africa. Thank you very much for coming. It's such a wonderful European and international community here. And I would like to thank also, already in the very beginning, our Bonn team with Kali Siedel, with Fabian Fischer, Jan Mehlich, and in particular Dorothee Güth, and also my colleague Jan Berner, that we could organize this meeting here in Bonn. I wish us all a very fruitful meeting, kickoff meeting, fruitful workshops where we closely work together. And I'd like to welcome you again, Vice Rector Professor Zimmer, and thank you for coming. The floor is yours.